Welcome back to another episode of Buckeye Cadence. I'm your host, Blake Biscardi, joined again by TJ Warner. We've got a recruiting mailbag episode for you today, including a new recruiting strategy from the Buckeyes. We'll dive into that. Plus, what everyone wants to know, what is the latest on David Gabriel Georges? We've got an update for you there. And then Marcus Fakatou, another top commitment or prospect for the Buckeyes. We've got an update there. He released his top 3 schools, and one notable school was not mentioned. Plus, there's some targets that are on Flip Watch. So TJ and I will get into that. But TJ, more official visits taking place at Ohio State this weekend. Who's on campus? What does everybody need to know before we really get into those major updates? But we've got plenty of intel for you guys right ahead.
Yeah, so this is actually the biggest weekend we have during OV weekends for Ohio State. And a lot of them are the commits coming in. The whole offensive line group is in. We have all 5 current commits there. And also the last little piece of offensive line, Caden Moss is there as well. He's a Mississippi guy. His top schools are Ole Miss and Ohio State are the top 2 going for him. It's a heavy Ole Miss lean right now, but we'll see if Coach Bowen and the rest of that O-line staff. I know a bunch of them have been texting me, like Davis Seaman, Kellen Weimer, Brody McNeil. You know, they're trying to put him on Ohio State and see if he can get that one done as well. And then a bunch of big name guys that we thought were maybe flip targets. DJ Jacobs, he's back on campus this weekend. Quentin Cipher, the linebacker's back on campus this weekend. So we have a lot of commits, but also a couple DBs, Deontay Malone and Monsanto Tolbert. Those are 2 big names to watch for Ohio State as the recruitment season keeps going. And they're going to be a big group to watch for as this weekend wraps up.
TJ, you mentioned that David Jacobs and Quentin Cipher are back on campus. What does that mean to have them back on campus? Anything going there? They just want to stay around and continue to build that relationship with the staff.
Yeah, DJ Jacobs is the one that everyone keeps talking to. Oh, it's Miami. They're gonna pull him away. Being a South Florida kid already, this is a huge thing already. Ohio State already didn't expect to have that commitment back in December. That was kind of a surprise to most Buckeye fans, including a bunch of beat writers as well. But having him back on campus right now kind of solidifies his emphasis of I want to be a Buckeye. And after this weekend, I would assume that Larry Johnson kind of locks him in. He's taking visits other places, but I would assume Larry Johnson really officially locks him in and ready to go to signing day.
TJ, you just put out an article Saturday morning that had a lot of answers to, okay, who's committed to this class already? Who are the prospects that Ohio State is still targeting? And what are the latest updates there? So if we work through that, or if you're listening and you want to go read that piece, tsilverbulletin.com, you'll see that piece from TJ. That is almost 2,000 words on what the latest updates are targeting all of Ohio State's recruits that are in this 27 class. But TJ, one of those names is going to be Brady Edmonds. So when we see a quarterback like this who's taken visits at UCLA, and is he locked into the Buckeyes? What's the latest on him that you're hearing around the country?
Yeah, well, even Brady, it came out of Brady's mouth himself that he didn't even feel the love from Ohio State for a little bit because they were trying to poach some other top name quarterbacks, most notably the Elite 11 finalist MVP Trey Taylor. That was a big name that Ohio State was really going to try to put on flip watch for themselves. But that the whole quarterback recruitment's kind of quiet down for Ohio State. Coach Day and Coach Billy Fessler, man, they believe in Brady at the end of the day, and they're kind of backtracking to kind of lock in that recruitment right now. He comes to campus for a 7-on-7 this upcoming week, June 17th, and then he'll do his OV out of Columbus at the same time. But he was at UCLA a couple weekends ago, and then that OV went, from what I've heard, really well, and it's a new possibility being a West Coast kid that he didn't think was a strong possibility before with how UCLA has been progressing. But man, UCLA is a team to watch now in that recruitment. But I do think if I had to put money on it, man, I think Brady Edmonds ends up in this class because Coach Ryan Day and Coach Fessler, man, they're going to be aggressive to make sure that he ends up here because that's ultimately their guy. That's the guy that they picked out 2 years ago when they were really recruiting this 2027 class. And I think he can be the guy here soon too. So I would expect him to lock in with Ohio State after this OV and really feel the love from Ryan Day and staff again, showing that hey, you're our quarterback in this class, and we're not really looking elsewhere anymore.
TJ, what is it about Brady's game that Coach Day and Coach Fusser love so much, where they handpicked him a couple of years ago? This is not somebody that they've been in this battle with over the last 6 months where it was a late offer. This is somebody that they have seen and watched develop throughout high school. What is it about his game that they like so much? And then how would that translate to Ryan Day's Ohio State offense?
It's going to look a lot like Julian Saint's offense, if that's what he's just got the prototypical size to go along with it. He doesn't have as quick triggers as Julian Saint, but almost nobody in the country does. But he's the prototypical pocket passer in the NFL. He's a big 6'5" frame. Probably I think he's around 235, 240 as well. I mean he's just a big quarterback with a big arm. I mean, an absolute cannon on him. And this is a guy that they love his accuracy and they love his decision making. They think he's just as strong mentally as he is physically gifted as well. So this is a guy that Coach Day and Coach Fessler really wants in Columbus. They just got a little greedy, I would say, and got a little complacent in trying to go out and get a much bigger, flashier target at some times during this recruitment. But they've honed back in on Brady and hope to lock him in after this OV the next week.
Quarterbacks need players to throw to, and especially at the wide receiver position, it has so much tradition at Ohio State. It's been recruited at a high level for a long time. There's a long lineage of receivers to wear the scarlet and gray that are Hall of Famers, that have numbers that are hanging in the rafters. And you look at how Brian Hartline recruited that position recently over the last 7 years, and you say, wow, is that sustainable? Is he bigger than the position, or is the place bigger than the person? However that shakes out, TJ, Cortez Hankton is in Columbus now. So we're going to find out that answer. And on a previous show that you said, Ohio State is still wide receiver U. And yes, Brian Hartline is an elite recruiter, and he enhanced that. But the place is still bigger than any one person who holds that. But there has been a little bit of concern, and I'll put that in air quotes here, with Cortez Hankton and his recruiting because, hey, you're looking at flashy 5 stars, or is this commit going to hold? Is he going to go elsewhere? Jameer Brown, though, how confident are you in his commitment to Ohio State, and what Cortez Hankton's strategy has been with this 27 class coming in after the season ended, and his strategy going forward as a recruiter? Because it's going to be hard to compare him to Brian Hartline. It's like when you have to coach after Nick Saban. Again, this is an apples and oranges example, but it's big shoes to fill from a recruiting standpoint. And it might not look the exact same, but Cortez Hankton is a great coach. He can recruit well, and now he has the resources that Ohio State offers. So when you look at his strategy, what are you expecting from Cortez Hankton? And then when you're looking at a guy like Jameer Brown, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, Jameer Brown, we'll go ahead and start off with him. He's officially locked in. Like he's shut down his recruitment. He's stopped his official visits everywhere else, and it's only Ohio State, and it's going to be next weekend for him. And he's already got the Blocko tattoo on his arm and everything. So he's going to be a 5-star wide receiver that will be on campus and just won the track record for fastest 100-meter dash in Ohio. Like he moved high schools to move closer to Columbus. This is a guy that's deeply rooted into Ohio State and just eager to get on campus. So we'll see him early January, late December. I would assume to be an early enrollee at Ohio State. So I would be very shocked if something else happened there. As far as Coach Hankton and where the rest of that class is going, I mean, he's got some other guys on flip watch. He's got Benny Easter, the Texas Tech commit currently. That recruitment has kind of been laying low recently because of other big 5-star names out there that were in that same OV weekend that he was in. But he was the only other offensive player in that OV weekend for a reason. And there's some buzz around it that Ben Easter really liked that visit and how it went and how it progressed, and he could see him being the number one guy in that 2027 class, being a bigger frame, not as a slot type guy like Jameer Brown is. So I would be shocked to know that he stays committed to Texas Tech. I would go ahead and put it on record that he is going to be looking elsewhere. And if Ohio State, that would be huge for Coach Hankton. As far as some other receivers, he's missed on some of the other targets that we had. We had Trey Moore. He went to TCU. We've had some other guys that have committed elsewhere as well. But he's got 2 guys coming in next weekend, Blake Wong and Jordan Donahue. Jordan Donahue's the big frame, 6'5" type of guy. Blake Wong's more of like a Brock Boyd type, 6 foot, not flashy, but it's going to do the job and get the job done as well. Those are 2 guys that I would look for Coach Hankton to lock in from the next weekend in the OVs. So if he can get those 2 guys locked in as well, that's kind of your piece. And then hey, can you go out and get the final gem of Benny Easter as well? that would be the I guess final infinity stone for Coach Hankton in his first year recruiting at Ohio State.
So TJ, you're mentioning Benny Easter and the flip watch there. So let's target those flip watch candidates right now, starting with Benny Easter. You just mentioned him. Who else is on flip watch for Ohio State right now that they could pull maybe from another school before this class is all said and done?
Yeah, well, the two guys that are committed currently that are on flip watch for everyone else, Brady Edmonds and DJ Jacobs. Those are the two guys that they want to really make sure that they lock them in. And those two, getting DJ up for an official visit this weekend, that was something that wasn't planned to begin with. It came up earlier this week, and that's how they locked that in. So that's huge for Larry Johnson and company and Matt Patricia, and building that relationship even more to lock that one in. Brady Edmonds coming in next week. That's a huge one as well. Benny Easter's the real big name that's currently committed elsewhere that would be on flip watch towards Ohio State. And I would be shocked to know if there's not a safety that comes up towards the end of summer or towards the middle of fall that Ohio State starts pursuing that could be committed elsewhere. Because I know they're not satisfied with just Eli Johnson and Angela Smith. They want one more in that class right now.
Are there any names that are floating around with that safety? Is it too early to tell, or is it something that's a little bit under wraps right now?
It's too early to tell, because the two targets that were really looked at as the next piece in that safety class was Kanass Sullivan and Seth Williams, and those two have now canceled both their OVs to Ohio State in the last 2 weekends. So those two are officially off the table for safety, it looks like. And it looks like we could see another situation like Kamari Being of last year, where we wait for the senior film to develop, and we find a guy that's committed to a lower level school, and we kind of grab him, get on there late.
So TJ, the offensive line. Okay, so we've talked quarterbacks, talked wide receivers. Let's talk about offensive line here and how Ohio State's kind of had everybody involved with these offensive line targets. What are you seeing about who Ohio State's looking at to fill some voids on the offensive line there? And what do you like about their games and how it applies, again, to the Ohio State offense and being able to play in the scarlet and gray?
Well, they have all 5 offensive linemen commits on campus right now, and they have the only other offensive line target, Caden Moss, on campus with them as well. Coach Bowen, I mean, this is the best offensive line class that Ohio State's probably had in the last decade. This is how great that class is. I mean, they had 5 4-stars with the ability to add another high-end 4-star, possibly 5-star towards the end of the class as well with Caden Moss. This is already this is a fun group. I mean, these are guys that are gonna absolutely get after it, and then also pick fun with you. I've had the chance to do multiple features on this group too, with Brody McNeil and Davis Seaman. Man, those guys are a great group of guys that will just do absolutely anything that this team needs them to do, play any position they need them to play, and just make it work at the end of the day. So, and I know for a fact that they're recruiting Caden Moss really hard as well, which Coach Bowen told Caden that he sees him to play offensive tackle. The only other one that we're for sure playing offensive tackle only in that group is Jimmy Callis right now. So there's a lot of movement in between Kellen Weiner, Brody McNeil, Davis Seaman, Mason Wilt. They can kind of play all around. Most of them will end up playing interior. Jimmy Callis will probably be the one that plays for sure outside. And if they had Caden Moss in there as well, I mean, he'll be another one that can for sure play outside. And Coach Bowen, man, this is his first real recruiting class. That's all him. And the new strategy for him is awesome. I mean, getting a bunch of guys from Ohio, getting a guy from Pittsburgh, getting a guy from Virginia, and then trying to go pick hand pick a big name out of the South is the way to go in the offensive line recruitment.
Something that's really important with an offensive line is how that unit gels. And we saw that last year with Ohio State's offensive line towards the end of the season, how they were able to come together and just the fun that they were having. But then coming back again this year where you see, okay, that's how they're really going to take that step forward this year, because developmentally, is there a ceiling? Is there not? That's what we're going to learn about Ohio State's offensive line that will be on the field this year. But if you already have this offensive line class building that camaraderie, that's only going to help, one, in their development, but two, in how they gel as a unit if they are all able to play at the same time. And then this is the offensive line of the future. And we're sitting here in 2028 saying, hey, remember when these guys were on campus and how they were already becoming friends and they're a really close-knit unit, and now see what they're doing in 28 and 29. That's something that we can watch to look at into the future, because that's an important part of that offensive line. But TJ, with Tyler Bowen, he's also gotten a little bit of heat from the fan base and from the public for him as a recruiter and a developer. How significant is it for him to have a class like this that can go ahead and maybe silence some of the noise. Because at Ohio State, when you agree to your contract terms that say, I'm going to coach X position at Ohio State, it comes with noise. There's no mute button in Columbus. It's just not possible. There's always noise, but you can turn the volume up and down a little bit. It's never off, but it's always loud. How significant is it for him to have a class like this coming in now to silence part of it, and then developmentally we can see how that will go over the next couple of months and years?
Well, you can tell during Coach Day's offensive line coach search that he wanted someone that could really recruit, because that's what we were lacking there for a little bit. We really had the developmental side of it, but you can only develop a no-name 3-star from Indiana or Wisconsin into so much. That's just how it goes at the end of the day. But now when you have Coach Bowen that's recruiting at this high of a level, getting 5 4-stars, and Kellen Weimer's on that range to be a 5-star as well. If they add him, and then if Caden Moss joins this class as well, I mean, this is just an absolutely overall great class that I will go on record. It's one of the best offensive line classes we've seen in the past decade for Ohio State, top to bottom. Just not just star-studded filled with 1 or 2 guys at the top end. I mean, these all 5 that are committed will be able to play at this level. And then if they add Caden Moss, like I said earlier, he will be able to contribute to that group as well. But developmentally, I mean, you can see with Ohio State, they've added a bunch of extra offensive line coaches. I mean, it's not just Coach Bowen. Let's be frank about that. He's got 3 other guys there coaching him with him at Ohio State right now. They're going to make sure that everyone's got a chance to have one-on-one coaching at one point during practice, because they have 4 guys constantly looking at that one unit. It's going to be a unit that develops more and more as time goes on, and how those coaches learn how to go about what way Coach Day wants that offensive line unit to work in his offense.
TJ, you mentioned a little bit of a different recruiting strategy for Tyler Bowen, but then also you said Ohio State as a program is taking a bit of a different strategy. So let's dive into that. What's different about this approach from Ohio State now here in 2026 in the summer as compared to maybe 23 and 24 with those classes? And what should we expect to see into the future about how Ohio State is going to throw its weight around, how it's going to approach official visits, NIL, targets? Because Mark Pantoni and that personnel staff, we give them credit every time we can, because you have to give credit where it's due. They are the best talent evaluation staff in the country. So what's changed? What's going to stay the same? What's been enhanced? And what's maybe done away with for Ohio State as far as recruiting strategy is concerned?
Yeah, well, they're talking about NIL a lot earlier. And with that, their OV list is cut down extremely. So if you look at the past year, uncommitted prospects that took OVs to Ohio State, that list is over 40 prospects. And OVs cost money for the school itself. They pay for them to fly there. They pay for their hotel there. That's a big thing. And they, not only the prospect, but the family itself as well. I mean, that's a big investment to bring in 40 guys on OVs that are uncommitted on top of your commits as well. So that's a different approach. Now they're going about the way of, all right, we want to make sure that we're in your top few schools, and we've talked about NIL beforehand, so we're not really wasting that time for you to come on OV. We talk about NIL, and we just realize we're not in your ballpark. So they leave that OV, and they're not wowed by Ohio State, because instead of offering them $1 million, they're only offering them $750,000. So that's the thing that they've cut out beforehand. They want to make sure that guys that like they're offered up front is also going to be able to take those OVs as well. So that's a thing that I think this year we have it come down to 17 or 18 uncommitted prospects that are taking OVs to Ohio State. And that's really let everyone, including the fan base, know these are the guys that are serious about Ohio State, because they know their NIL offer up front, they know about the program up front, and they're still choosing to take the OV there because they're a serious school in their recruitment. That's the big shift from this past year with the scouting staff, that they wanted to bring you in for the OV, then talk about the NIL offer that they could package and bring you in with. And that just didn't work for most of those kids nowadays, when, I hate to say it, but NIL is like a big thing for most kids nowadays. It's the new way of college football, and that's just how it's going. So in Ryan Day's aspect, it's you got to adapt or die. And they're adapting right now in this class, and it's proved to be a lot more successful for this OV season this year than it was last year. So it's a great new strategy, and I'm loving. You save the resources that instead of using on OVs, you can actually package that in the NIL offer instead. So you're saving money in the long run, and I love that for Ohio State.
If you had a pre-show bingo card and you had 2 Nick Saban references on there, you're going to get both of them to hit right now. So TJ, Nick Saban in Alabama had a Nick Saban tax or a Nick Saban discount when you went to go play there. Is there one to come to Ohio State? Is there a discount NIL-wise to come to Ohio State? Because you're talking about these players, sometimes they just want to walk into your office and say, hey, coach, I need $800K to come play for you. If you're not in that ballpark, then I'm not going to entertain it, regardless of development. And now, not every prospect is like that, and it kind of gets blown out of proportion that everyone just walks into an office and says, hey, I need this much money, and if you can't do it, then I'm out. That's not always the case. But that financial aspect is a major part of these recruitments. And you just mentioned that Ohio State now adjusting to go ahead and mention it earlier to see, okay, we're taking quality visits on campus as opposed to quantity, and then talking about NIL while they're here, doing a little bit more of that legwork ahead of time. But for Ohio State, because of how they can sell the development, when you watch the NFL draft every single year in the first round through the fourth, through the seventh, you're going to hear the Ohio State University, ex-player from Ohio State. Ohio State can sell that. Hey, we might pay you 10, 15, 20% less than some of these other schools, but the NFL contract that you're going to get if you stay here, develop, buy into our programs and coaching, we'll turn you into that kind of prospect where you can go ahead and sign 20, 30, $40 million contracts as a rookie. Look at Carnell Tate, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, and all of these guys in the past years. It's not just a wide receiver. So go ahead and speak to that.
It's definitely a thing. I wouldn't say for a lot of the top end recruits when they're getting crazy numbers thrown at them. Ohio State's got to get to the point where they can come close or match those offers. But some of those mid tier guys that are mid level 4-stars on most recruiting sites, those are the guys that, all right, it's either a hometown feel for them or they can get a little NIL discount because of who they are as Ohio State versus going to, I don't know, let's throw out a Tennessee of the world, So something of that nature is definitely something that comes with it. But let's just be frank too. Like Ohio State's, they're one of the biggest spenders right now, and they're doing it to make sure they get their guys at the end of the day. And the guys that they have at the top of their table, the top of their boards, they're making sure they're going out and getting. So whatever money they need to make that work, they're doing their job on the back end to get that money to make those things work so they can get their guys at the end of the day.
Right. And that question wasn't to say, hey, Ohio State's trying to be cheap or they're trying to get by saying, hey, look what we can do. Like our biggest recruiting pitch is, TJ, you have those jerseys behind you there, but just like flip those to NFL jerseys and all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, look, that can be me. That's not what Ohio State does.
All 4 first-round draft picks from this last year.
Right. Yeah, you see that, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, like that could be me. You're looking around and saying, okay. But at the same time, Ohio State's not just using that. Ohio State has money. Ohio State can and will spend, but Ohio State does it very intelligently and very strategically. I think that's more so what you're getting at. It's not that Ohio State wants to say, hey, we're going to get everybody for 10% off because we can just flaunt in there that, hey, we're Ohio State. No, Ohio State gets it, and Ohio State is at the front end of a lot of the changes in college football right now. Ryan Day has done an outstanding job at adapting. And he said in that press conference, he gave him the reference, it's adapt or die. When he was talking about the dinosaur documentary on Netflix and applying that to college football, you adapt or you die. And Ohio State continues to adapt, and they continue to adapt at an elite level. And I think right now, TJ, you're starting to see it pay dividends. But now can they close all these recruits with that strategy? What's the close rate going to be? And that's what we're going to see throughout the summer and all throughout this commitment season with these prospects. But on that note where you're saying, hey, let's use Tennessee as that example, Ohio State's locked into a major recruiting battle right now with Tennessee for a 5-star running back, David Gabriel Georges. You've been close to this recruitment for years. There's an excerpt in your article. Again, go ahead and read that, tsilverbulletin.com. But TJ, he took both of his official visits, Ohio State first and then Tennessee. Who was in the lead before these visits? And then now, what has changed since he's been on campus, got to sit with both coaching staffs, have the family on there, other players that could be in the class, friends? What's the latest with David Gabriel Georges? Because this is something everyone across the country, but especially in Columbus, wants to know.
Yeah, the 2 fan bases in Columbus and Knoxville have something to be really excited about for whoever gets this guy. At the end of the day, he's a Jeremiah Smith type personality as well. One of those gym rats that's super shy and doesn't want to be in the public eye as much as people think either. Just a plus human being, also an A plus prospect. So, but this is a recruitment that I've been very frank with, and I said before official visits, I don't think Ohio State leads. I really do think Tennessee is leading this recruitment at that point. After official visits, I would say it's truly 50-50. From his uncle, he's voiced it. Hey, it's more closer. It's closer than we think, than anyone thinks out there too. There's a bunch of crystal balls for Ohio State out there, and I don't see the confidence in that right now. I would say the two things that really matters to him is relationships. And the relationship at Ohio State is Coach Laughlin. They consider him a family friend now. That's how great their relationship is with too. And they said Ryan Day really opened up during their official visit. So that's something that they haven't had the really good connection with before. So is it something that Ryan Day can kind of come on and be like a Chris Henry Jr. Last year and have that last phone call and just make the decision stick for David Gabriel Georges to Ohio State? But on the Tennessee side, Josh Heupel, he's got a great connection with them. Very, very good relationship there, but also has a bunch of teammates at Baylor that just went this last year. Gabriel Osenda, Jamiam Theodore. I mean, those are two guys that were on his high school team last year. That is two of his best friends. That's not something to like take lightly too. That are both at Knoxville right now. So with those whole scenarios, the relationships, it's going to come down to that. At the end of the day, and I do think Ohio State did have a gain in the recruitment after OV season to kind of level it out to 50-50. So I would say that's a positive for Ohio State, but I would say it's still a long way to go to make sure they lock down this commitment, because this is one that will go to his commitment day. Like I said earlier, I don't think he's flipping once he commits. It's just getting to that commitment day, which is scheduled right now for July 22nd.
TJ, you said something that, hey, there's crystal balls to Ohio State, and then you're like, wait, hold on a second. I may not put the confidence in there. Then you closed and you said, hold on. Ohio State gained after those official visits. Tennessee was leading beforehand. So someone could be listening to the show and saying, well, how could those two things both be true? How could you not be confident in some crystal ball projections from recruiting experts around the country, and then also say, hey, Ohio State has gained ground, and now it is a true 50-50? So explain that to the fan listening who may not have the intel and the relationships that you do, coupled with everything you know about David Gabriel Georges, because what you said is true.
Yeah, well, I was actually looking at my first DM to David Gabriel Georges that I have on Twitter, and it was back 4 years ago when I told him congrats on moving to Baylor from Canada, and when I was still on staff in a football recruiting setting. So that's one of those things of, I've built that relationship when I was recruiting him to a different school at that point. We didn't think he would turn into a 5-star talent that he is. So that school has no chance of getting him, obviously, now. But building that relationship from there on out, and being at multiple games this past year at Baylor and plan to be at multiple games again this year. I mean, this is a guy that really values relationships, and it's not NIL that he values. So now there's a bunch of numbers out there floating around what Tennessee's offering, upwards to $2 million a year, $6 million guaranteed in NIL. Like, that's not something that, first of all, that's something that's valid. No one knows the numbers for real. Those are just rumors out there floating around. And that's another thing that this family and this recruitment is in particular of, like, NIL is not a factor here. They're going to get theirs no matter where they go. If it's Tennessee, they're going to get theirs. If it's Ohio State, they're going to get theirs. So that's not something they're worried about. They've already been offered packages that they're plenty happy with, no matter what school it is. So that it's really comes down to relationships, and he thinks he can get developed at either school. One school he talked about, Tennessee, he said Dylan Sampson's a recent guy that came out of there that was all SEC running back. That's exactly the type of player he wants to be. He wants to be an all conference running back and work his way to the NFL. Now, do we think he's going to do it at a much better level than Dylan Sampson or Bo Jackson? Probably. Yeah, he's that talented of a prospect that we can go ahead and put like labels on him that he could be better than Travion Henderson and Quinshon Junkins was that year. Like, we can go ahead and put those labels on him. Everyone understands the type of prospect he is, but he's also an A+ human being too. So how do you mesh with getting an A+ prospect, A+ human being on your campus when NIL doesn't matter? It's relationships, and who has the best relationship I would bet that to be best relationship would go to Carlos Lachlan. When a family and his uncle tells you that they consider Carlos Lachlan a family friend, I mean, when it comes down to relationships, if that's the case, I would lean to Ohio State. But when they tell you beforehand, Tennessee is leading because he's got a better relationship with the head coach and the rest of the staff, just not just his position coach at Ohio State. That's where it kind of levels out of okay, Ohio State kind of opened up and brought it back with Coach Day kind of opening up to the whole family there too. So now is it can Coach Day and the rest of the staff, Arthur Smith is a big one too. Can the rest of the staff buy into, hey, this is how we're going to use you. This is how we want to build our relationship. This is what we want to do with you here in Columbus. And this is our 3-year plan to get you to the NFL and be a first round draft pick by this time. It's how does that relationship really evolve over the next month is really all I have. So that's the big one right there.
And relationships too, they've been talked about at Ohio State for years. And again, everybody talks about it, but Ohio State has so much testimony with it. Woody Hayes said it, you win with people. Ryan Day emphasizes that thought all the time. He always talks about the importance of people and having the right people in the right places. That went into his hiring of Carlos Lachlan. That's how they evaluate recruits when they're looking talent-wise and saying, okay, it's not just who has the 5-star rating, who has the 4-star rating, who has the statistics. It's how are they as a person? How is their family? What is that life like? Because they're going to come in and need to be a culture fit. And from everything you've said about David Gabriel Georges, there's confidence that he's going to be a culture fit in Columbus. That's not a concern. But you're mentioning this great relationship with Carlos Lachlan and also with Josh Heupel. But then something that was mentioned by name from the family is that Ryan Day opened up a little bit more on this past visit. And knowing Ryan Day, having spoken to Ryan Day face to face and having seen how he is with people, he is a people and a relationships person. And that's only going to be a benefit for Ohio State if Ryan Day continues to do so. But TJ, one of those things you mentioned was that Chris Henry Jr. recruitment, where all of a sudden this week is happening with the Big Ten championship game, Brian Hartlight leaving for USF, Oregon and Phil Knight pouring in millions of dollars to go ahead and try and lure him away at the last second. But Ryan Day pulled a Mariano Rivera moment as a closer and came in and sealed that recruitment. If that is to happen again, what would it be like for Ryan Day to do that? What would those conversations look like to you from what you've seen and what you know of what he values, David Gabriel Georges, and then also Ryan Day and Ohio State's approach to this?
Yeah, well, the big thing that they really said from this past OV is that they had a real relationship with Carlos Lachlan. They didn't have a real relationship with Coach Day. And really his philosophy of coaching and then his family dynamic as well. Like they really value knowing you as a person and knowing you as a coach as well. That family really does, and DGG really does. Just he wants to know everything about you to make sure that school makes it a best fit for him as a culture as well. And that's one thing that Ryan Day, like I said, really opened up, and that's one thing that he's going to continue to do. And I think that the final phone call for Ryan Day can really play a factor in it, but. Is that more of a factor than his 2 best friends from high school texting him every single day saying, hey, Knoxville's this, this, and that? Like they're making sure that they're giving those 2 teammates of his from high school the best treatment they can in Knoxville to make sure they're going back and telling him this is the type of treatment we're getting in Knoxville as well. So it kind of goes both ways. It's do you listen to Coach Ryan Day who just won a national championship 2 years ago, or do you listen to 2 of your high school teammates that just went to Tennessee and that's 2.5 hours away from your high school right now?
There's so many factors in this recruitment, and this is an intense battle that's going to come down to the wire, like you keep saying. But another notable prospect for Ohio State, DGG, is the top offensive target. Marcus Fakatou is the top defensive target. And TJ, he released his top 3 schools a couple of days ago. What was notable about those top 3 schools that stuck out to you immediately? Because we had texted about this. I saw it, and you immediately hit the message. You said, this is huge. Why?
This is a big thing because his top 3 schools left out one important school of Notre Dame, who he told me his top 2 schools going into OV weekend was Ohio State and Notre Dame. So where in the lines of that flipping to Georgia and Texas being in the top 3 with Ohio State? So the biggest competition I've been told now is Texas, and that's where the Larry Johnson prodigy is there now at coaching edges, and that's exactly what Marcus Fakatou wants to be. I've been told, I said in the last podcast, I think his body's going to take him into a 3 tech. He doesn't really want to hear that. He's slimmed down to 260 and wants to be an edge. So everyone's really recruiting him for an edge, but it's going to be turned into an edge at Houston type of situation where he kind of moves back into 3 tech. So that would actually help Ohio State in this class in particular too, to fill a gap in the inside. But man, Marcus Fakatou, this is a guy that every single person wants in the country for a reason, just because of his size and physicality. And he's got 5 crystal balls into Ohio State, and I would join that list right now. I would be willing to bet that he's a silent commit right now, waiting on some other possible offers from Texas and Georgia right now to see what they're doing to help with that aspect of it. But I think Larry Johnson really impressed him when he came to Columbus. It was only his second time in Columbus during the OV. They came in the spring and made it out for an OV as well. And they laid out the red carpet. Matt Patricia was a big one in that recruitment as well. That's a big thing now. Is Matt Patricia is making sure that he's making those relationships with those defensive players, because why not? And they're really helping out. Arthur Smith and Matt Patricia are really helping out Mark Pantoni on the NFL side of it, of how do we go about roster construction with the NIL issue as well, and making sure that we have a good placement and using our resources the correct way. And this is a recruitment with Marcus that they're definitely pushing for. Matt Patricia's pushing for as well. So I expect Matt Patricia and Larry Johnson to close this one very soon.
And you mentioned Arthur Smith before as a coach that has started to get involved with this. Now, again, he's a newer coach to Ohio State because he was hired in the wintertime. But Matt Patricia, being the other former offensive coordinator in the NFL, former head coach in the NFL, you've mentioned him and how involved he has been to close these recruitments, but also how involved he is. Then again, with Mark Pantoni, with talent evaluation, roster construction, and all of these things. What is the value that Matt Patricia can bring outside of those things, just to the defense when he's looking at a prospect? Now, it's again, this is another area where you can say this is testimony for Ohio State, not just theory. And you say, oh, look, we have a student versus teacher battle right here with Larry Johnson and his mentee. They might coach the same way. You might learn the same things. You might say, hey, you know what? Larry Johnson could retire in a couple of years because, again, you use that with coaches when they flirted with retirement. But then you have Matt Patricia as your ace in the hole. What value is that for Ohio State?
Yeah, it's extreme value, because 2 coordinators that have NFL head coaching experience is going to help, first off, help your scouting staff in evaluating talent. And then it's going to help you out with your general manager with making sure you're spending like a salary cap, for instance, making sure you're using the right money in right spots and right times. That's undoubtedly the reason they came in as a coordinator to begin with. They didn't really think that recruiting was much in their role, but Matt Patricia has really fell in love with building relationships. I mean, all the guys from last year's defense loves him for a reason. He loves building those relationships and making young men even better young men. So that's one thing that he's found a new love for, it seems like. And that's one thing that he's taken really good pride in as well, is making sure, hey, if I want to keep up these good defenses, maybe recruiting might be a good thing. I don't really have first-round draft picks every year that I can pitch to draft an edge or draft a safety or draft a linebacker. I need to go out there and make those relationships myself, and I could have 3 first-round draft picks this year just because I make a relationship with the kid. That's one thing that he looks like he's really big into now. He made sure that he was right there hip and hip with Marcus Fakatou that whole time when he was on his OV back in May 29th, and that's something that looks like made a huge difference in his recruitment.
Even with Matt Patricia, he talked about at the end of last season how valuable it was for him to build the relationships with these players, but the energy that it gave him when he comes into the facility every single day, he's like, you know what? This fuels me. I love pouring into these kids, building relationships with them and their families, being a part of their lives. And even with members of the media, he'll come up and just say, hey, man, how's your family? Always a big hello, always super personable. Mm-hmm. And that translates. And maybe when he was the coach of the Lions and you see this mystique of Matt Patricia standing at the podium and the big scruffy beard, and you're like, man, that guy looks pretty intimidating. But then you get to know him. He is outstanding as an individual, extremely personable. And you see that starting to translate on the recruiting trail too, because it's not just out of Matt Patricia's mouth that is something that people notice. It's out of the mouths of the players. When the players talk about playing for Matt Patricia, that is one of the first things that they say, how good of a relationship that they have with him and how involved that he is in their lives. And he's like a father figure or almost an older brother in that sense, where how much fun that they have together. And you could see it when you're watching them walk out of practice or in practice and you see him engaging with these players and the other coaches. It is really outstanding to see. And that stuff is absolutely real from an inside look of what you hear on the outside. But TJ, again, so many official visits happening.
Mhm.
What else can these fans expect of who Ohio State's going to have on campus as we wind down the show today?
So there's a big list right now on campus that most notably the corner commits. Does Montana Tolbert? Does Jaden Carey from that past weekend? Does Deontay Malone? What does that DB room look like after this official visit weekend? Who kind of falls into that place first? We'll see how that goes. Next weekend is really for Cortez Hankton, and the wide receivers to really lock in the rest of their class. They have Jameer Brown right now. Can they add Jordan Donahue and Blake Wong as well? They have a big one, 5-star wide receiver Monsoon Sales on campus this weekend. We'll see if any buzz comes out of that. That's a big one where Indiana and Alabama are the two front runners for that. Texas, LSU, and Ohio State are kind of in that second tier group. Can Ohio State and Coach Hankton move up into that first tier group and have a real shot at it? We'll see how the buzz looks after this weekend.
And TJ, what are the final thoughts that you want to give to this entire episode? Anything that you want to add, something that was missed, you want to, again, just add a little bit more depth to? What's the last piece of value that you want to give to the listeners today?
Yeah, so if you're worried about the fan base that's out there worried about certain commits right now, I would say to slow your roll, because the defensive line unit's turning out to be really good. I assume Marcus Fakatou is going to be in that group really soon. Linebackers are looking really good. Kaylan Bailey's a name to watch adding in the linebacker unit real soon. The DBs, I expect a couple of these corners that are on official visits to go ahead and commit this week, or possibly in the next couple weeks before June ends. And I look for a safety. Look for a safety name to be added towards maybe middle fall, that they kind of jump on someone else after senior tape comes out a little bit and try to go flip another safety. But offensive line's looking really good. Tight end's a spot that I don't think Keenan Bailey's really has the leeway to go get somebody this year. A bunch of the tight end guys they had, Brock Williams was the big target they had. Once they missed on him, they're kind of backing off of most of their offers at tight end. Wide receiver, look for Cortez Hankton to fill it up at the end of this week. And then Brady Edmonds, he's the big one of keeping his reins at quarterback. And then the big one of DGG is the one that everyone's going to be watching for the rest of the OV season, just to see if they actually land him or if they have to pivot and try to go flip somebody else late.
So TJ, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Yep, TJ Warner _ on Twitter and on Instagram. So go ahead and go check that out.
And if you guys want to give me a follow, it's at Blake Biscardi. And then make sure you're following all of our outlet social media pages for the Silver Bulletin at Silver Bulletin, and then the website tsilverbulletin.com. Guys, we appreciate you tuning into the show today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the channel. That way you get the latest updates. As soon as we provide them, episodes will drop there new on a weekly basis until we get into the season. Then you'll start seeing multiple episodes per week. Again, if you're listening on podcast, make sure that you are subscribed and following the show. We appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you next time. God bless.